Hello and welcome to the Sherdog Radio preview for UFC on ESPN 28, Hall versus Strickland, or as the kids call it, UFC Vegas 33. I'm your host, Ben Duffy of Sherdog.com. With me, as always, is Keith Schillen. Keith is the executive producer of the Sherdog Radio Network, where he is the producer and creator of numerous shows, including MMA Legacy, Getting Too Personal, and, of course, the Schillen and Duffy Show, which brings you UFC recaps every Saturday night or Sunday morning, depending on how long those things run. Keith, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Yeah, I think it's always, Sunday morning when we do the show. But, yeah, I'm great, man. We got a big, huge weekend. I think this is the first time that we're adding a bonus fight to the card. As I don't know, was I supposed to tell people that we're gonna do the Pitbull and McKee fight at the end?
That's right. It's a surprise only because I forgot to mention it.
Okay.
But yeah, we're also going to talk about the biggest fight of the weekend, which is Patricio Pitbull Frey versus AJ McKee in the headliner of Bellator 263. But before that, we got 13 fights to get through. Keith, you and I mean, we're down in the trenches. We're grinding on this stuff. We're not those people that show up, to give high-level previews of 4 big fight cards a year. We're talking about these cards every week in and week out, the huge pay-per-views as well as just the regular old fight night cards. And because of that, I feel as though we're not under any pressure to try to pretend like every one of these fight cards is the greatest thing ever. Just we kind of have to spit the truth about them. We're going to be watching them either way. We're paying equal attention to them either way. Sure. But we're certainly not here to pretend that every one of these cards is God's gift. Having said that, as I was working on this card, watching tape, reminding myself, what these fighters have been doing in their last couple of fights, this one is especially dismal from a competitive standpoint. Here's your statistical fireworks of the day. This is a 13-fight card. Yeah. There is a 7-fight undercard, 6-fight main card. The 7-fight undercard, so 14 fighters, there is not a single fighter with a winning UFC record. Every single fighter is 500 or below or debuting. Of the 14 fighters on the undercard, there are only 3 who are coming off a win in the octagon.
Wow, who's the 3?
The other 11 are either coming off a loss or they're debuting.
Do you know who the 3 are off the top of your head?
No.
Trevin Jones, he's coming off a win.
Jinh Frey is coming off a win.
Jinh Frey, okay, that's 2.
And I think Nicco Montano might be coming off a win.
No. She lost to Juliana Pena.
That's right.
Is it? Oof.
I know there was a third.
Dan Wu?
Nope, it's not Yanan Wu. I'm serious, dude. It's rough. And obviously, every card is going to have some people coming off a loss. Just about every fight has a winner and a loser. Most UFC fighters don't get cut off their first loss. So by definition, any card should have almost half fighters coming off a loss. But this one is just completely beyond. And it's really only up till you get to third from the top is Cheyanne versus Gloria DePaula. That's 2 women coming off a loss. On the main card is Ryan Benoit versus Zarrukh Adashev. They're both coming off 2 losses. There could be a cut list.
Yeah, there's going to be. Sunday. I can't find the third person. Is it Collin Anglin? No, he's making his debut,
Collin.
Right?
Yeah, Anglin and Baghdasaryan are both.
He was on the Contender Series.
Right.
Is it one of the fighters that got canceled that's no longer, or is it one of these guys that went from the prelims up to the main card? Maybe I miscounted. Maybe there's only 2. That's even worse. So that's what I'll say about this card. We have a card that, it is, you said, there's 13 fights. We're going to watch all 13. We talk about the 13. Bad MMA is still better than good baseball. I'd rather watch a prelim. I'm sorry, my alarm going off. I'd rather watch a prelim fight than sorry as I'm messing up this segment. Yeah, I'd rather watch a prelim fight on a Bellator card than the NBA Finals game. But I feel like this card is like some people need to follow a recipe when they cook, and then some people just can throw any spices in something. And I feel like that's what we got here. Like we just have like someone who's got a big pot and they're just throwing like they're making chili and they're just throwing every spice they have in their cabinet in this and see what it tastes like afterwards. Because there's no rhyme or reason to like the layout of the fights. I mean, I know the co-main event with Chris Dawkins was canceled, but you know, we got Ronnie Yaya in the co-main event. We got Ryan Benoit versus Zarrukh Adashev is on the main card. I don't know, like Jared Gooden coming in short notice is on the main card against Niklas Stolze. Like Stolze, like that somehow he lost his opponent and his card moved his fight moved up the card. I don't get it. It's we got two girls who are 0-1 in the UFC. That's third from the top. Yeah, this is tough.
Oof. Yeah, it's a weird one, but we're here to talk about them. I mean, unless you got anything else, you want to just dive into these prelims?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, right out of the gate, we've got Phillip Rowe versus Orion Cosce at welterweight. Rowe, the 31-year-old New York native, is 7-3 overall. He's 0-1 in the UFC. He made his long-delayed UFC debut in February at UFC 258, dropping a unanimous decision to Gabriel Green. That was his first fight since winning a roster spot in Dana White's Contender Series Season 3 all the way back in August of 2019. He'll be taking on a fellow Contender Series product in Cosce. The 27-year-old from Northern California is a perfect 7-0 in his mixed martial arts career. He won his UFC contract last August on Dana White's Contender Series, the same episode as his brother Lewis. Both Cosce brothers were meant to make their UFC debuts last November. Orion had to pull out with an injury. Lewis lost his debut, so maybe it was a good night not to be in the building as a Cosce brother to fight. But whatever the reasons, he is back. He's ready to make his debut. It is this Saturday in the Curtain Jerker. He is the slight favorite. Cosce is -160, where you can get Rowe at +140. Keith, as our resident Dana White's Contender Series expert, I will certainly punt this one to you. Who do you see winning this one, and how?
Well, so these two guys, there was one guy that I liked coming off the Contender Series. The other guy I wasn't crazy about. I was okay with him being in the UFC, but I don't see much ceiling to him. So I'll give who that person is when I get to my prediction. I'll start with Cosce. All you gotta do is look at his fight record. He has every single one of his wins, both pro and amateur, were all come by way of stoppage. My breakdown of him heading into the Contender Series was that his record was extremely padded, like facing extremely low-level guys. But then he got matched up against Matt Dixon, who I like as a prospect, on the Contender Series show, and he got a great win. So that I feel much better about him moving forward. He's a southpaw, very powerful straight left. He's got huge power in his hands. Throws a lot of kicks. Defensively, he makes some problems because he does a turtle game where he kind of ducks a lot, and someone's going to time a knee coming up the middle or an uppercut. But if he gets in close to, he's strong in there. Great clinch striking. He likes when he's in there. He likes to try to look for a standing guillotine. He likes to reach over and try to get a standing guillotine when he's in the clinch. But he's also a good wrestler. He's got some insane strength. I've seen him on some of the regional fights just grab a guy's leg and lift him over the head and just throw him. I see him suplex a dude on the regional scene. I hate that he goes for head and arm throws. Both him and his brother do that. And, you know, anybody who's ever heard these breakdowns know how much I hate that. But on top, good ground and pound. He has had his back taken in some weird scrambles, which by low-level guys, which I don't like. I am a little worried about his cardio due to never going to a decision. But in fairness, I haven't seen him slow down yet. So I just want to throw that out there. Like, I'm just questioning it, but I'm not saying he has bad cardio. I'm going to move over to Rowe. This is another guy that had kind of a suspect record heading into the Contender Series, also faced low-level guys. But then he beat Leon Shabazian, Edmund Shabazian's older brother, which that's a quality win. He's kind of a physical freak. I mean, he's a long and lengthy fight. He's got an 80-inch reach, which you got to like being in the division. He does well to keep his opponents at the end of his punches. He knows how to use his reach. He throws straight punches down the pipe. Nice power in both of his hands, though he does drop his hands. He is elusive. I'll give him that. which he needs to be considering he relies on head movement. But he's been backed up against the cage when pressured. I don't like that. He has hard leg kicks, but he doesn't really throw his kicks enough. That actually could be a really big tool for him, especially if he wants to rise in the rankings. But he doesn't check leg kicks. And he was actually outworked in his debut by Gabe Green, which is not like, I don't like a guy that, you should never be outworked. And that's always like a negative for me. He was dropped on the Contender Series by Shabazian in their fight. When he gets in the clinch, that's probably his best position. His knees are a strength, but he's not much of a wrestler in the sense of a takedown artist. He more of a guy that wins scrambles. If he's on top, pretty good ground and pound. He has a submission threat. He likes a topside guillotine, but I don't like that he's overconfident in his grappling. Like he'll pull guard and just he really wants to get the fight to the ground. And he looks for subs. He plays what I call plays jiu-jitsu instead of trying to scramble back to his feet, and that helps you lose rounds. So which guy do I like better? It's tough because they both faced low-level guys to really grasp them. But I really like Cosce's like berserker style. Like he comes out, he's throwing hard. If Rowe can weather a early storm and kind of create distance and kind of pick apart as Cosce slows down, then he has a really good chance. I just don't know if he does. Cosce has huge power. He can wrestle. I hate Rowe's moments of inactivity. I hate his fight IQ of pulling guard against better wrestlers. I'm gonna say Cosce finds a way to get past the reach. I think he lands some hard shots himself. Maybe mix in a takedown. Might get some ground and pound. I just think he ends this. I think he's gonna end it early. Give me Cosce by first round TKO.
Wow. I'm glad that you seem to have spotted some of the same things I did in looking at these guys. Both of them have the feel of a real raw prospect to me in that they've both gotten to where they are by doing things that they won't be able to get away with at a UFC level. I mean, at least not once one of these guys gets past the other and moves into the general population at 170. You mentioned Cosce's the head and arm throw, the takedowns that he really just finishes with pure power, and instead of necessarily the cleanest technique. Rowe's willingness to pull guard. Those are things that are not going to serve them well as they keep moving up the rankings. And you imagine that both of them, Cosce's just young, period, but Rowe, at least young in the game, they'll work past those, or they won't, and they'll be out of the UFC. I really want to take Rowe in the slight upset here. And if he doesn't get blitzed in the first round, I do think the passage of time starts to favor him. Just because, and like you said, I don't know for a fact that Cosce's cardio is bad, but I just can't envision him being able to keep up that pace and use the kind of just brute strength fighting he does for 3 rounds. So I'm just almost betting on it's not going to last. I just don't think Phil Rowe is the guy that's going to test it either. I have Cosce in this one as well. I also have him. I was going with a first round finish, but just to keep it interesting, I will pull it out into the second. Give me Orion Cosce by second round TKO, probably with ground strikes. The UFC Vegas 33 prelims move along. It is the bantamweight division, and Keith and I have found that elusive other guy who won his last fight in the UFC, as it is Ronnie Lawrence versus Trevin Jones, 2 guys who both won their last fight. Lawrence, the 29-year-old Tennessee native, is 7-1 overall. He is 1-0 in the UFC. He won his UFC debut, knocking out Vince Cachero in the 3rd round of their matchup at UFC Fight Night, Rosenstrike versus Gane. He earned that shot in the UFC by winning on Dana White's Contender Series last September, where he beat Jose Johnson by unanimous decision. He'll be taking on Jones. The man who goes by 5-star is a 33-year-old fighting out of Guam. He is 13-6 with 1 no contest overall. He's 1-0 with 1 no contest in the UFC. In his short notice debut, he notched one of the biggest upsets of the year in the octagon, putting away Timur Valiev, smoking Timur Valiev, you might say. And then that was overturned to a no contest because that was not the only thing Jones had been smoking. He came back from that nonetheless at UFC 259 in March, and put away another highly touted prospect in Mario Bautista, whom he knocked out in 40 seconds of the second round at UFC 259. Despite Jones being the prospect killer over the last year or so, he is the underdog here. Lawrence is minus 145, Jones plus 125 as just the very slight dog. Keith, does Trevin Jones have what it takes to keep this streak of upsets and prospect slayings going, or is this the end of the line?
Yeah, that's a tough question. We're going to see. I would say this, like, does he? Yes. Will he? I don't know. I've been impressed with him, though. Like, southpaw, counter striker, very fast hands. He has two really go-to moves. He has his straight left, which is accurate, and his counter right hand. His counter right hand is what put Valiev out in their fight. And it's pretty ironic because I said this last time, I still feel this way. I think he's still raw. Like, he still has a lot of seasoning, so if he already has two good tools, I think he can continue to add some moving forward. He does keep his hands a little too wide for my liking, leaving his midsection open. And he also, his lack of technique, loses power, which is kind of crazy when he's knocking dudes out, that he can actually generate even more power. He struggled when pressed on his back foot, but he has really good hard kicks, though he doesn't check kicks. We saw that against Valiev. He was hurt to the body against Valiev. But he can wrestle himself. Good takedowns, good timing on his takedown, nice entries. He has 4 submission wins. He showed incredible heart in his comeback win against Valiev. And then he showed any doubters, that it wasn't just a fluke lucky punch when he knocked out Mario Bautista, another guy that a lot of people like. Now, Lawrence is a guy that I really liked coming off the Contender Series. The thing that stands out to me, and I said this last time on him, is his composure. He's very composed, very relaxed, can fight from both stances, sets up his tact with feints well, has a really stinging, active jab, nice right cross, will target the body. I would say he has plus power. He doesn't have Trevin Jones power, but he has plus power. He'll sneak in a spinning attack to please the crowd. Lots of kicks. And I said this another thing last time. I said this when I wrote the Contender Series preview for him. He has a killer instinct. If he has you hurt, he really turns it up and puts you out. We saw that in his last fight. He knows how to finish a fight. Pretty good wrestler, solid takedown defense. If you do take him down, he springs right back to his feet. Prefers it on the feet, but he can wrestle. I love this matchup because I like both guys. Jones has serious power, but I think Lawrence was one of my favorite guys in the Contender Series because of how already seasoned he looked. Very technically sound. I'm going to go with him. I think he outclasses Jones on the feet. I mean, obviously, every time Jones fires off a shot, he can knock him out. But I think Lawrence is just more technically sound and has more tools. So give me him by unanimous decision. And I think there's going to be a slugfest. I think there's going to be some really good moments. And I'm going to lock this in as my fight of the night early on.
I'm completely with you here. It's interesting what a finished product Lawrence looks like compared to Jones, despite the fact that Jones is the guy that's a 20-fight veteran and has fought all over the world. It is really weird. I think part of it might be that the Jones coming up, especially in the kind of south, the Southwest Pacific island promotions, wasn't fighting the toughest opposition until fairly late. But yeah, I like Jones has been a pleasant surprise as an addition to the UFC, whereas Ronnie Lawrence is somebody that, like you, I was high on him as soon as I saw him on the Contender Series. Both these guys have staying power in the UFC. It's ridiculous that Jones's fantastic signature win was overturned. If you're joining the UFC on 4 days notice, something you might have smoked 3 weeks ago that did not help your performance. It does suck to lose your win over that, but I've got Lawrence in this one as well. Lawrence by decision should be a barn burner. One of the best fights on the card. Next up, it is the strawweights as Jinh Frey takes on Ashley Yoder. Frey, the 36-year-old Dallas native, is 10-6 overall. She is 1-2 in the UFC since joining as a former Invicta atomweight champion. She fought most recently back in March at UFC Fight Night Edwards versus Muhammad, taking a unanimous decision over Gloria de Paula to earn her first UFC win. That followed up a decision loss to Loma Lookboonmee last October, and a third-round armbar submission at the hands of Kay Hansen back last June. She's taking on Yoder. The 33-year-old Californian is 8-7 overall. She is 3-6 in the UFC, and fought most recently in March at that same Edwards versus Muhammad card, dropping a unanimous decision to Angela Hill. Despite their opposite trajectories, Yoder is the slight favorite here. She is -130, where Frey is +110. I feel bad because even though Jinh Frey finally got her first UFC win, it didn't make me believe in her anymore. I think the UFC just finally found a woman that the Jinh Frey technique would work against. Frey's problem, and you and I have talked about this, is despite the fact that she looks like a comic book character, it's a very small comic book character. She wasn't especially big compared to some of the atomweight she fought, even though she did have a few problems making weight. And when she tried to make her grinding, slow-paced kickboxing, clinch, wrestle when I have to game work against strawweights, it just didn't work. Even ones like, Loma Lookboonmee, who were, especially big, but, Kay Hansen, who's like a burly little ball of muscle, really, really bodied her. Again, in the DePaula fight, I didn't see a whole different Jinh Frey. I just saw Jinh Frey against an opponent that her game would work against. Even though Ashley Yoder, her record in the UFC looks miserable on paper, she doesn't have any terrible losses. Angela Hill, Lavinia Souza, Mackenzie Dern, like there aren't.
Sorry to interrupt you. When you say terrible losses, you mean name value, not actual performance, though, because she's got some bad performance.
Oh, yeah.
I know what you meant. I just want to make sure the listeners knew what you meant.
Okay, yes. Like, she doesn't have any bad looking losses. Some of the performances themselves were pretty rough. What Yoder does have going for her is, like, she's a very tall, long, rangy strawweight. And early in her UFC career, I mean, she was long and lanky, but obviously not terribly physically strong, and kind of got bullied around by stronger strawweights, which would seem to be a pretty good recipe for Frey to have success against her. But she's kind of turned a corner on that. She used to be a one-dimensional grappler without much physical strength and just terrible striking. I feel as though her striking has gotten a little better, and she herself, I don't know if she is actually just physically stronger or she's made improvements in her technique that just allow her to hold her own better. But I'm with the odds here. I think this is going to be another one where it's not going to be the fight of the night, but Frey is going to fight her game and just lose. She's going to try to have a medium to slow pace kickboxing range from distance, and she's going to lose it against a rangier striker. And when she tries to clinch or tries to bring it to the ground, I'm not sure she's going to be able to, or I'm not sure she's going to be able to in the positions that will allow her to win rounds. I'm not going to say finish the fight because she's not a finisher and Yoder doesn't get finished. So give me Ashley Yoder, probably in a 2-1 decision, and a fight that will have us just, very, very eager for the next fight.
Yeah, you said something. You said this is not going to be the fight of the night. I agree. No matter what the outcome is, if Yoder wins or Frey wins, it's going to probably be a really ugly, either boring affair that would probably favor Frey, or a sloppy affair and that would probably favor Yoder. I'll start with Frey, as you mentioned, former atomweight champion. She's very undersized. You said she's she looks like a superhero, but she's a mini one. Like, I don't follow superhero movies, but I'm like, it was Ant-Man a movie, right?
Ant-Man was a movie.
Is there an Ant-Woman? Is there like a...
Yeah, like she could be the Wasp, who was like,
Oh, that like the little sidekick girl?
Yeah.
Or I shouldn't say... Oh, hold on. I shouldn't say girl. I mean woman. I got roasted on the... We got roasted on our comments for saying I called someone a girl. I did not mean it as an insult. I apologize to whichever female fighters I was talking about last week. I must have called them girls. Back to Jinh Frey, a woman in her own sense. She's a southpaw counter striker. As you mentioned, she can be very trigger shy at times. Especially when her opponent refuses to lead. She does not like to lead. She wants to counter, and that's because she has good timing on her opponent's attacks. Like she's good. She's got good fast twitch muscles where she can land. She got pretty good hand speed. But like you mentioned, she likes to grind against the fence, which doesn't really fit her. What should fit her game. You talk about like Luma Labumi is smaller than Jinh Frey and still beat her up in the clinch, out-muscled her in the clinch and beat her bad. She will. Wrestling's probably a better part of her game. That's what she won last time. Double and single leg entries. On top, good top control. We saw that in the last fight against Gloria DePaulo. Looks to advance position when she's on the ground. Decent takedown defense if you try to take her down, but if you put her on her back, she does struggle to get up. Move of the Ashley Yoder, also a southpaw, so that should be an interesting affair. You mentioned very big for the weight class. Her boxing's very raw, and she really struggled with the speed of Angela Hill in her last fight, and that's because she's not a good athlete, but also she has some technical flaws. One, she keeps her chin high in the air. But I like that she throws a lot of kicks. And Jinh Frey is not really one who's going to be moving around a lot. Jinh Frey is going to stay in her face, and that kicks can be much more effective. But we talked about Jinh Frey wanting to get in the clinch. That's also a position that Ashley Yoder is probably the best part of her game is her clinch, where she goes in there, she throws her knees, she gets some clinch body lock takedowns. I hate that she constantly goes for that head and arm throw. She shouldn't do that against. Well, one, she shouldn't do it against someone who's much shorter than her in Jinh Frey, but also someone who wants to get the fight to the ground. Don't go for that. I think Frey is the better fighter. I really do. However, as you mentioned, you really stressed the size difference. I feel the same way. I think Yoder's going to be too big for her. I don't feel like a lot of confidence in picking Ashley Yoder. I think she's one of the worst girls in the division. But I think there's gonna be a lot of clinch fighting, and I think she's gonna be too much, too strong for Jinh Frey. I expect Yoder to control her against the cage, land some clinch striking. I think it's gonna be a close fair, but I'm gonna say Yoder wins by split decision.
There you have 2 picks for Ashley Yoder to get it done against Jinh Frey. The UFC on ESPN 28 prelims power on in the featherweight division as Danny Chavez takes on Kai Kamaka. Chavez, the 34-year-old Floridian, is 11-4 overall. He's 1-1 in the UFC. Made his debut last August, taking a unanimous decision over TJ Brown. He came back this February and lost the unanimous decision to Jared Gordon. He's taking on Kamaka. The man who goes by the Fighting Hawaiian is 26-year-old from Hawaii, of course. He's 8-4 overall. He's 1-2 in the UFC. Won his own UFC debut last August over Tony Kelly by unanimous decision, and since then has dropped back-to-back fights against Jonathan Pierce, who knocked him out in the second round at UFC on ESPN Smith versus Clark last November, and TJ Brown, who took a split decision over Kamaka in May at UFC on ESPN Reyes versus Prohaska. Odds on this one are close to a pick'em, but Kamaka is minus 115. Chavez is out there minus 105 right now. Cannot quite get him at even money. Keith, we're talking about 2 guys definitely in need of a win in the UFC. Are both these guys UFC material, and who takes a step towards proving it on Saturday?
Yeah, so I'll just the line being pretty much a pick 'em. I agree with that. Like I'm not very confident in this pick either way. I think both guys are UFC level, lower UFC level, but they both show some talent. I'll start with Kamaka. He's well rounded. I like good Kamaka is nonstop pressure. He's moving forward, good counter striking, loves to get in the pocket and unload some big shots. Has good variety in his attacks when he gets in there. You can see some hooks, you see some stepping knees, teep kicks. Will go down to the body. I'd say he has plus power, not earth-shattering power. He has a high guard defense where if he's on the outside, he can wrestle. He can grapple. He's strong in the clinch. He's a former NCAA wrestler. Nice takedowns. He has been taken down by weaker wrestlers though, which I'm surprised. And he did slow down in his fight against Tony Kelly in his I believe that was his UFC debut. Mm-hmm. But that fight was like insane, fight of the night. And I wouldn't be shocked if this kind of goes the same route. Chavez is also a counter striker, so I'm really interested in who's going to lead this dance. Fast hands, a nice pop. He dropped TJ Brown in his fight against that. Good timing good at timing his opponent's attack, similar to what I was saying about Jinh Frey. He does throw everything hard, so it's going to look like a lot like Julio Arce did last week, where he was counter-striking, but not just tapping. He was unloading power shots every time Ul committed. Like, that's something Danny Chavez wants to do. I like that he throws kicks both to the body. He'll stick one up high. He'll go down low. Like, it's all areas of the body. In the TJ Brown fight, a lot of leg kicks. Took out TJ Brown's power with the kicks. Dropped him with a few leg kicks. He has some wrestling of his own, good entries. He showed good takedown defense against TJ Brown in his debut. He is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, though he doesn't have a submission win on his record. I've seen him slow down. I wrote this last time when we were breaking down this fight against TJ Brown. I see him slow down in the regional scene, but he looked much better against TJ Brown. However, then his follow-up fight against who was Jared Gordon. He looked like crap. Like, he looked fantastic against TJ Brown, and he looked terrible. Like, he was stuck in first gear against Jared Gordon. So it's just really tough. I can't get past Kamaka's loss to Jonathan Pierce. I felt like Jonathan Pierce was a good stylistic matchup for Kamaka, and then he looked terrible. But then I also felt like Jared Gordon was a good stylistic matchup for Danny Chavez. Math doesn't work, but in this case, I'm just going to go with it. Chavez beat TJ Brown. TJ Brown beat Kamaka, whether you believe in the split decision or not. Chavez leg kicks stands out to me most of when I break down the skills. I say he chops down Kamaka's legs, and I actually say he gets a stoppage after, late in the, chops his legs and lands something with his hands. I'll say Chavez by third round TKO and a very slight upset.
I'm glad that you seem to be having as hard a time picking this one as me. Danny Chavez has just been playing with my emotions for like a full year now. When he came in and debuted against TJ Brown, I was like, okay, this guy, he takes like a year and a half, 2 years off at a time. He's debuting in the UFC at like age 33. Some of his, like, it's rare that you find a fighter who's come up with like 10 or more fights in the United States, and you can't find half of his regional fights. Like, I remember there were just a couple of his fights that just flat out, they weren't on YouTube. They weren't anywhere. It's like, where have you been fighting and who? That nobody in the building even had an iPhone. And then he came in, he looked so good against Brown. I was like, okay, well, this is one of the surprises of the year. And then he looked awful against Gordon. So yeah, he's definitely been playing with my emotions. I feel as though Chavez's power, as you mentioned, like just his punch power and then the damage he can do with leg kicks are his best tools against Kamaka. Kamaka's best tools probably are the pace he can put on and his offensive wrestling against Chavez's defensive wrestling. I can totally see, Chavez just starting to rack up damage with leg kicks and getting a finish late, like you're picking. I am going to go the other way, just acknowledging that those are the weapons that are on the table. I'm gonna go with Kamaka to just throw more volume, land more shots, even if they aren't as hard. Maybe get a few opportune takedowns and not get himself guillotined. And I'm going to take Kamaka to take a decision as the very slight favorite. Next up, the lightweights take the cage as it is Chris Greutzemacher versus Rafa Garcia. Greutzemacher, the 35-year-old Arizonan, is 14-4 overall. He's 2-3 in the UFC. Fought most recently on the UFC's Halloween Fight Night card last October, where he got knocked out by Alexander Hernandez in the first round. Previous to that, he had absolutely brutalized Joe Lozon into a corner stoppage between rounds all the way back in April 2018. So long layoff for Greutzemacher. He'll be taking on Garcia, the 26-year-old Mexican who plied his trade almost exclusively in Combate up until his UFC debut in March, is 11-1 overall. That one was his UFC debut, which he lost via unanimous decision to Nasrat Haqparast at UFC Fight Night Edwards versus Muhammad. Garcia, a strong favorite here. He is minus 275. You can get Greutzemacher at plus 230 or plus 235 as the underdog. I understand the line here. I was excited when Garcia signed with the UFC. He was basically probably Combate's best prospect. Like, maybe not their best fighter, period, though he might have been that as well, but just their best prospect as in someone they brought in, home grew. He was still in his mid-20s. He was a great get for the UFC. And I just think Nasrat Haqparast was a really, really tough ask in his first in his UFC debut. Like, I still think on talent, Haqparast is probably a top 15 lightweight. And yeah, it wasn't a great look for him. Maybe that's a fight that goes differently in a couple of years once Garcia gets some seasoning against UFC level opposition. Greutzemacher, he fights exactly like a guy whose name is Greutzemacher would, and whose nickname is Grits. He is a gritty dude. You look at him. I mean, he's obviously strong. You look at him, he's built like a tank, but he is not a plus athlete by the standards of the UFC lightweight division. You know, slow on his feet. Hands are pretty slow. He is just a straight up kind of mid-level UFC roster guy at this point. And I think Garcia is just going to be a bad matchup for him. I expect that Garcia will get this to the ground and either pound him out or more likely tap him out. I'm going to go with Garcia by second round submission.
Yeah, so I think your breakdown of Greutzemacher using his name was perfect because he's not a good athlete. He's not very technical. He's kind of slow. He's very aggressive. He's high output. He understands that his best bet is to make it a brawl and see if his chin holds up more than his opponent's. But he lacks power. He's not a big cracker. He does have some nice elbows, and he is mean. Like, if you can get in the clinch, he can beat you up with elbows and knees and stuff. But he keeps his chin.
The Lozon fight, dude. It was just such a beating.
Yeah, he keeps his chin high in the air as a big target, lacks head movement, doesn't check leg kicks. I'd say he's a decent topside grappler, though he's a very average takedown guy. He's not going to take down many, anybody with a wrestling background. And I'm worried about his chin. I mean, his last fight, Alex Hernandez was teeing off on him and then brutally knocked him out where he felt like crawled underneath his legs. It was a scary one. Garcia, I'd also say that he's not a great athlete. He's flat-footed, but he's also very aggressive. He just marches down his opponent. He was marching down Haqparast. Not the best strategy, but he wasn't intimidated. He kept moving forward. He wants to throw it out in the pocket, which actually gives Greutzemacher a chance. He throws wide, looping punches. He tends to leap into his shots, kind of closing distance with his leaping shots, but he has some good power. He will shoot for a takedown himself. He's relentless to get him. However, as I said last time, I think his shots are a little ugly. He kind of overreaches and ducks his head, and he's got to get a knee or get guillotined by a really good grappler, not Greutzemacher. I do like his chin. Oh, actually, well, hold on. So the reason why he gets not only does duck, but he'll just basically rush you to get to the cage, and he's strong enough where he can just pull you out. I do like his chin, though. He ate some huge shots from Haqparast and just kept moving forward, and he had the cardio to back it up. Like, he was going strong in the third round. It's harder in the third round than in the first round. So Garcia's a negative, would you say, negative 300 or so favorite?
Like 250, I think.
250. When I looked today, when I was writing my notes, it was negative 300. It might be 250 now. And that's simply because Greutzemacher isn't good. I think Rafa beats him up on the feet or the ground. I agree with you. I think he might get it to the ground. I actually think he gets a submission too. Give me Garcia by second round submission.
There you go. 2 picks for Rafa Garcia to get things back on track by second round submission. Next up at UFC Vegas 33, it is a Contender Series delight as featherweights Collin Anglin and Melsik Baghdasaryan prepare to square off. Anglin, the 28-year-old from Michigan, is 8-1 overall. He fought at Dana White's Contender Series last September, where he took a unanimous decision over Muhammadjan Naimov. He's taking on Baghdasaryan. The Armenian, by way of Glendale, California, is 29 years old, 5-1 overall. Fought also last September on the Contender Series, where he took a unanimous decision over Dennis Bazookia. His a bit of a strange career, as he had a single one-off fight when he was like 22 years old, disappeared from MMA for 5 years, apparently took some kickboxing fights, He came back in 2019, won 4 fights in a total of about 60 seconds to get that Contender Series call. I will throw this one to you, Keith, but when I hear an Armenian last name and Glendale Fight Club, all I have to ask is, are we going to see any head movements in the octagon?
Yeah. Sorry. Give me the pronunciation again. See, because you're the pronunciation guy.
Melsik Baghdasaryan.
Baghdasaryan. All right. I'll start with him because I'll tip my tongue. This guy Baghdasaryan has both professional and kickboxing experience. That's why he was big layoff. He was doing the kickboxing scene. Fought in K1, fought in the WLF World Kickboxing Championship. As you mentioned, trains in the Glendale Fight Club, which it seems like every Armenian fighter does. Well, prior to the Dana White Contender Series, though, he has faced really low-level competition. I mean, you look at his wins. He's got 4 wins. This is the times: 7 seconds, 9 seconds, 14 seconds, and 32 seconds. I don't know if that talks about his striking or his level of competition, but it's probably a little bit of both. I mean, you can give anyone a tomato can. If you knock him out in 7 seconds, that's still really, really. I mean, unless it's me fighting Francis Ngannou, it's everything else is pretty impressive. So. He's very fast. When you see film on him, you basically have to go off of the Contender Series, other than the less than a minute combined for the 4 fights. But what I've seen is very fast, extremely accurate, hits very hard. His left hand is a kill switch. It's deadly, incredible, quick high kick. He hasn't shown me anything on the ground yet, and he did slow a little bit on the Contender Series fight. Actually, I thought he slowed a lot. And that might be a little bit of the jitters, a little bit of going past 32 seconds in his career. It might be a little bit of combination. But move over to Anglin. Anglin was a guy that I liked in the Contender Series. He recently started training with Factory X, which I like, even though his home team of Scorpion Fight System, I think, is an uprising team. He beat Muhammadjan Nemov, as you said, on the Contender Series. That's a really good win. That's a good prospect to beat. He's elusive, good footwork, good boxing. His left hook is a really good developed tool. I think he's got some good power. He moves a lot, but when he wants to set an attack for the power shots, he'll plant his feet and land the power shots, almost whipping his punches with great force. He can get a little wild at times, and he makes a mistake of just pulling his head straight back to avoid strikes, and also stays on the center line, which is a problem considering most of his punches come from weird angles because he throws from his hips. But he's got a good kicking game, hard kicks to the body. I saw him finish an opponent on the regional scene with body shots, sneaky high kick himself. I love that he will fake a shot and then throw it overhand. That's actually when I was training. I used to do that a lot myself. To do that, you have to be a takedown threat. And Anglin is. He's not an elite wrestler, or even, I don't know if you'd even categorize a wrestler, but he's enough of a takedown artist that opens up his striking. Good. He's more of a sprawl and brawl striker. Like he wants to keep it on the feet, but he's got good enough takedown defense to keep it there. But I've seen him fade late in fights, which is an issue. Now, I like both these guys. Obviously, I know a lot more about Anglin's game than I do I'm gonna try not butchering his name, Baghdasaryan.
Perfect.
However, I haven't seen flaws in Baghdasaryan's striking. I've seen some flaws in Anglin's. But then obviously you say, hey, Keith, but what about his ground game? I mean, we've seen him when he lost early in his career. He was submitted him, like you said, it was forever ago. But Anglin should come out wrestling. That's probably his advantage. But I don't think he does. And if you get wild against a guy that is dangerous as Baghdasaryan, there's a very good chance he puts you out. And I think that's might what happens. And I'm going to say Baghdasaryan keeps his knockout resume going and gets another first round. Well, I know he got a decision on the Contender Series, but I'm saying he adds another highlight reel knockout. Give me Baghdasaryan by first round KO. But that said, even though I'm taking a first round KO, I like England's. I'm not dogging that guy. I think he's a good addition to the UFC roster.
I mean, you obviously are much more familiar with both these guys' games than I am. One thing that I'm thinking after what I've seen of them, and I've seen of Baghdasaryan literally only his Contender Series appearance. I've seen a little more of Anglin. The Sherdog Fight Finder has Anglin listed at 5'9" and Baghdasaryan at 5'8". I have the feeling that when they square off on Friday at weigh-ins, or when they get in the cage together, there's going to be a lot more than a 1-inch height difference between them. I have the feeling Anglin's going to look a lot bigger. And I mean, that's not uncommon. we you know, we're not out there with a tape measure at Sherdog, like, you know, asking, like, you know, I don't see Adrian Yanez on at Fury on Sunday, be like, dude, can you stand against the wall and let me, like, you know, get the tape measure real quick? We take what we get from promotions.
Don't give Jay Petrie the idea. Don't give Jay Petrie because Jay will do that. Jay is, yeah, like if there's a fighter around Jay Petrie, I can see Jay like making sure our reach is accurate.
Yeah. Just kind of eyeball it because Jay knows he's exactly 6 feet tall. He's like, yeah. And it happens even at the highest levels. I mean, Shane Carwin went from 6'5" to 6'1" while on UFC roster, as like we finally realized how badly, you know, they had been like pumping up his height. But I have the feeling England's going to be quite a bit bigger. I'm at, you know, just on pure hunch, I'm going to go with Anglin on this one. I don't think, you know, I'm going to count on him to not run into Baghdasaryan's like kill shot power and just be able to take a decision over him. But I might be wrong in about 7 seconds. The feature prelim of UFC on ESPN 28 is a bantamweight matchup between former flyweight champ Nicco Montano and Yanan Wu. Montano, the 32-year-old Arizonan, is 4-3 overall. She's 1-1 in the UFC, having fought just twice in the nearly 4 years since she joined the promotion. She fought most recently in July of 2019, dropping a unanimous decision to Juliana Pena at bantamweight. Previous to that, you have to go all the way back to the Tough 26 finale in December of 2017, where she became the UFC's inaugural women's flyweight champion by taking a unanimous decision over Roxanne Modafferi. She'll be taking on Wu. The 25-year-old Chinese fighter is 11-4 overall. She is 1-3 in the UFC. Her lone UFC victory all the way back in November of 2018, a first-round armbar of Lauren Mueller. Around that, she has lost to Gina Mazzani, Mizuki Inoue, and Jocelyn Edwards, all by decision. Odds on this one favor Montano fairly heavily. She is -220, where you can get Wu at +185. Keith, we were talking about this off air just before we started recording this segment, and you just asked flat out, is Nicco Montano the most hated fighter by the UFC? Not the most hated by fans, but the UFC's own most hated fighter ever. I mean, she was a champ 2 fights ago, and she's like on an undercard right now. She combines a lot of things that the UFC hates into one package. Being injured a lot, missing weight, and not being in terribly exciting fights. I mean, that's 3 strikes. You can get away with any one of those, and the UFC will carry you. But yeah, the disrespect, man. Why is this fight on the undercard?
Yeah, can we go back 5 years ago? 5-6 years ago? Everything you just said, you could have said about Khabib Nurmagomedov.
Injured a lot, trouble making weight, not always the most exciting fights. Absolutely true. I mean, they are more the case for Montano.
Yeah,
like she missed years at a time and actually missed weight, or actually, you know, like sent herself to the hospital during fight week. But yeah, I mean, that's.
Yeah, I just want to. Yeah, so Nicco Montano. I mean, you talk about the drop off. 2 fights ago, she won the title. She never lost the title. She fought Juliana Pena in a close fight, who is now fighting for the title. And now she's on
upper weight class.
Upper weight class, yeah. Now she's on the prelims. Like, that's insanity to me. Like, this, she's not on a 5-fight losing streak. You know, she's on a 1-fight losing streak. She's a Ultimate Fighter winner. She's a former champion. I actually like that she's not facing like a highly ranked opponent. Like, I actually like that.
Can I interject one thing real quick?
Sure.
That's what I was going to say. That's the only thing that makes me think they have any tiny bit of love left for Montano. If they really wanted her gone, like, she'd be fighting, you know, Claudia Gadelha or somebody.
Yeah,
and just getting punted by someone who's not even ranked.
Yeah, the problem is if you put her against a ranked fighter, she might win.
Then what do you do?
Yeah, what do you do? So it's one of those. There had to be a lot more behind the scenes than we know of, because I've never seen a champion like get the treatment that she has. I mean, I get it. She hasn't she fought once in 4 years. Like, that's really bad. So with that said, being that she's only fought once in 4 years, we really don't know what to expect from her moving forward. She hasn't fought in 2 years. I was looking at her booked fights. She's pulled out of, or either she pulled out or just the fight got canceled for some reason. 7 out of her last 8 booked fights. So I understand there's probably a lot of frustration there. So let's talk about her skill set. And I have to base it off of basically what we last saw of her, because I have no idea what we see. Like, she could be as good as she last was, or she could be completely shot. We don't know. But she's southpaw. She on the feet. She has a kind of herky-jerky, unorthodox striking style. She switches stances a lot. Her boxing is pretty raw, but I like her kicks. She throws a lot of kicks, hard kicks, and she's a good grappler. She's strong in the clinch. I mean, we go back to her last fight, Juliana Pena. She had a lot of success out-muscling Juliana Pena in the clinch. And think what you want about Juliana Pena. Like, that's quite an accomplishment to out-muscle Juliana Pena. She's a good wrestler, Nicco Montano. She's good at winning scrambles. If she's on top, she's got solid top pressure. The first round against Juliana Pena, she kept her pinned against the canvas the whole time. She looks to advance to a better position on top. If she's on bottom, she does struggle to get up, and that's what lost her the fight against Juliana Pena. But that was a really close fight that wasn't decided to the very end. Now, Wu's big for the weight class. Like, that's the one thing that stands out. She's not a small girl, and mind you, Montano was the champion in the weight class below that. So she's not much of an athlete. She's kind of slow. She's very trigger shy at times. Not the biggest output. I'd say she's also a pretty raw boxer, though. I like her feint. She uses a lot of feints, but she lacks head movement. Has decent kicks. She's not a great wrestler at all. But she is a submission threat. Like, she submitted Lauren Mueller. She almost caught Mizuki Inoue in a standing guillotine. So there's some things you like. That, like, this is not a complete wash from Montano on the ground. But that said, as far as prediction goes, this is a huge step down in competition for Montano. I think Wu is probably the perfect stylistic matchup, other than maybe getting caught in a submission, or if she's just completely shot as a fighter. I expect her to get some takedowns, and I think she beats up Wu. I eventually think she gets a ground and pound TKO. I say it happens in the second round. I think Montano is a much better fighter than she gets credited for, and I think she gets a lot of hate from the UFC, but also, like, fans tend to hate her. The whole Valentina Shevchenko thing, whether she was scared of her and she pulled out and all this stuff. Regardless of that, she's a good fighter, and I think she smashes Wu.
I'm with you here. Assuming that the time off and the injuries have not just completely compromised her, she should have enormous advantages in strength and athleticism here. The other side of Nicco Montano's underrated achievements or dismissed achievements is that in Roxanne Modafferi, she had about the most advantageous style matchup you can imagine for her, because she's a strong woman, good wrestler and savvy grappler. It was almost a guarantee that she was either going to box up Modafferi on the feet and Roxanne couldn't get her down, or she was going to take Roxanne down and park in top position and just fight off submission and sweep attempts. She has a lot of those same advantages over Wu. Just Wu is one of those fighters. She's tall for the division, but she is not physically strong. And yeah, unless Montano is completely broken, I think she's just going to kind of pick her up, fling her on the ground, and start mauling her. I'm not going to pick the finish just because Wu has proven fairly durable, even as she's been overwhelmed by other fighters. And Montano has not been a finisher either, even when she's had, substantial advantages over her opponents. So I'm just going to say it's a one-sided decision. But yeah, I have Montano big in this one as well. And maybe if the UFC doesn't absolutely hate this woman, then maybe it's at least a wait and see fight. Okay, let's get her a winnable fight. Let her win it. See if she doesn't take another 18 months off with injury, and we can go from there. Because, whether they like her or not, they can use contenders in both of the divisions in which she has competed. The main card of UFC Vegas 33 kicks off with a welterweight matchup and immediate fight of the night contender in Bryan Barberena versus Jason Witt. Barberena, the 32-year-old Minnesotan by way of Arizona, I believe it is 15-7 overall. He is 6-5 in the UFC. Fought most recently last September, taking a unanimous decision over Anthony Ivy. That snapped a 2-fight losing streak for him in 2019, where he lost to Randy Brown and Vicente Luque, both by third-round TKO. He'll be taking on Witt. The man who goes by the Vanilla Gorilla is a 34-year-old fighting out of Glory MMA and Fitness. He is 18-7 overall. He's 1-2 in the UFC. Fought most recently back in March, where he got one punch starched by Matthew Semmelsberger at UFC Fight Night Edwards versus Muhammad. Previous to that, he fought twice for the UFC in 2020, choking out Cole Williams on the Halloween Fight Night card and getting knocked out in just 48 seconds by Takashi Sato at his debut at UFC on ESPN, Poirier versus Hooker. Barberena, strong favorite here, minus 260. You can get Witt at plus 225 as the underdog if you like. Keith, there's a pattern here. Jason Witt, he wins or he gets knocked out in less than a minute. Is either of those your pick for this fight? And if not, what is your pick?
Well, I'll do this. I won't give you the answer to both of them because I don't want to give away my pick. But I'll say him getting knocked out in under a minute is not my pick. So I'll say that. So Barberena, if you go back to our recap show when I was describing Darren Elkins, I gave him a new nickname. I'm not going to say this now, but make sure you check that out. The same nickname could fit really good with Bryan Barberena. He has that personality. I love Bryan Barberena as a fighter. He's got every single ounce of athleticism he has. Like, he's drained all the talent out of it. He got like every bit of talent he has. He's got it all. Like, he's maximized it. And I just love guys like that. Yeah. So he's a southpaw, high output striker, just stays in your face the entire fight. Pressure counter striker. He's a guy that we talk about high output. We also talk about a guy like that uses cardio as a weapon. Like, cardio is a tool for him. He's got to outpace you. He's got to outwork you. He pressures you, but he has a slip and rip style. Like, he's got to pressure you, force you to throw, slips. You're going to throw a jab. He's going to counter with like a 4-punch combination. If he gets in close, he's got a mean attitude. He's looking for knees in there. He's looking for slicing elbows. I think he's got underrated power, especially when I also think he has underrated intelligence. Like, he's not just a brawler. He's got some good technique, and he targets the body. He understands like what wins rounds, what wins fights. He'll sneak in a takedown in a close round to make sure he secures that. Good ground and pound. He's a weak defensive wrestler. And I don't know if I should say he's a weak defensive wrestler or if it's more on who he's faced. Like, Colby Covington took him down a whole bunch of times. Leon Edwards took him down a whole bunch of times. But then Anthony Ivy took him down a couple of times. So that's when I'm like, is he a weak defensive wrestler? But what I like, though, there's a reason why Colby Covington had so many takedowns against him, because Barberena worked himself right back to his feet, which is really impressive. And he's a submission threat. He only has 2 submission wins on his career, but he uses submissions. Like, he can put you out with most of his submissions go off for attack in the head, darce chokes, guillotines, but he uses those to win a position. Like, he'll lock in a darce choke, catch you to roll, where then he's suddenly on top. My one biggest concern about him, and this is my biggest concern for anybody that has Barberena style, is the amount of damage they've taken over the years. Like, eventually that catches up to everybody. Like, suddenly Diego Sanchez went from the most insane, durable guy to, wow, Diego Sanchez is getting knocked out. That's how I feel like Barberena. I'm not saying that's going to happen now. I'm just saying, like, that day is going to come. Move over to Witt. Not very athletic, kind of stiff, flat-footed. Hands are pretty slow. He tries to make it up also by being a pressure fighter. Does also target the body. His kicks are pretty hard, but he keeps his chin high in the air. I like that he fakes his wrestling shots to set up his hands, which I like. Like, he something similar. I was talking about Collin Anglin. He does the same thing, but he also will look for takedowns, and he's extremely strong. I go back to the Cole Williams fight where he picked him up, walked him across the entire cage before slam, kind of Matt Hughes, Frank Trigg style, or Frank Trigg 2. Heavy top control. He kind of has the old school Tito Ortiz style, where I said, or Mark Coleman, where he wants you to just sit in your guard, keep your pinned against you. Every time you go to move on your, heavy pressure back down on your hips, kind of, or back down on your shoulders, try to keep your shoulders pinned up against the cage. And he did get a submission against Collin, but when he goes against a guy who's a much better athlete, things got to happen to him, like what happened last fight where Matt Summersberger knocked him into another dimension. So as far as prediction goes, I really feel like this is Barberena's fight to win. Nobody out pressures Barberena, and that's usually how Witt wins. I expect Barberena to stop enough takedowns from Witt. He might get taken down 1 or 2 times, but I think he'll work himself back up and probably tire out Witt, and then just outwork Witt on the feet. I expect it to look a lot like the Anthony Ivy fight, where Anthony Ivy was looking to wrestle, but either his takedowns were stopped or kind of useless, where Barberena just popped right back up. And then I just expect as the fight goes deeper on, that Barberena just starts widening the gap, in the output and got his lead in the fight. I don't know if he gets him out, but I say he does. I say Barberena gets a stoppage. I'll say 3rd round TKO.
Outstanding. I love the way you broke down Barberena's game. I found that over the last couple of years, I've started to think of him in my mind as kind of poor man's Bilal Muhammad, where his reputation as an exciting action fighter kind of belies how intelligent he is. It's like he's like aggressive, but never to his own detriment. It's not like he's like, turned a fight into a wild scrap and then ended up losing to somebody he should have beaten. All the people who have beaten him are just people who are better at the things he does. He has a reputation as a knockout artist, but as you say, it's more because of his pace than because of numbing power. Like, except for a very extremely shot Jake Ellenberger, all of Barberena's knockouts are, from an accumulation of damage. He gets a guy going on his heels, he swarms, and it's over. It's not like Semmelsberger over Witt, where he just flatlined with 1 shot. Witt, I mean, this guy could be in the dictionary just under the entry for Midwestern grinder. And he could be in the dictionary as the definition for Midwestern grinder, if even in the dictionary from 2008. There's a certain old school, just barely post tough feel about, Jason Witt. He's a guy that if he was 10 years older, he would have been a guy that just, racked up a dozen fights in the UFC from 2006 to 2009. You're like, oh, really? This guy was 7-5 in the UFC, that kind of guy. But yeah, a definite disadvantage against Barberena here. I agree with you. He doesn't have enough of a wrestling advantage, I don't think, to put this fight where he wants it to go. And if it goes to the ground, there's every possibility. Like you said, Barberena he's a sneaky, intelligent, efficient grappler. He grapples in a way that it serves to help him win the fight instead of win the grappling match. You always love to talk about guys who want to play jiu-jitsu. They have jiu-jitsu, but terrible takedowns or terrible takedown defense, or they're too willing to just jump guard with a guillotine, or too willing to spend half a round on their back instead of trying to get back up. Barberena is the opposite of that. His grappling is a tool for him to win the round or get in the position to win the fight. So we might even see Barberena out grappling Witt on the ground. And if we do that, then we get to see one of my favorite things ever, which is seeing James Krause just absolutely lose his shit in the corner, because there are few things angrier than James Krause watching one of his fighters get out grappled. You can tell he just wants to climb in the cage himself and show how it's done. That might happen on Saturday as well. But I have Barberena. I have him big time. I don't know about a finish. I'm going to go ahead and call this one Barberena by decision, but I think it's going to be a frustrating night for Jason Witt. Next up, it is a possible pink slip derby as Ryan Benoit takes on Zarrukh Adashev in a matchup of flyweights on 2-fight losing streaks. Benoit, the 31-year-old Texan, is 10-7 overall. He's 3-5 in the UFC. He has lost 2 in a row. Most recently, he dropped a close unanimous decision to Tim Elliott at UFC on ESPN, Kattar versus Ige last July. Prior to that, he lost a split decision to Alateng Haile at UFC Fight Night, Edgar versus Korean Zombie in December of 2019. He's taking on Adashev. The 28-year-old Uzbekistani, by way of Brooklyn, is 3-3 in his young mixed martial arts career. He's 0-2 in the UFC since debuting last summer. He lost his debut to Tyson Nam, getting one punch knocked out in 32 seconds at UFC on ESPN, I versus Calvillo. He came back in January and dropped a unanimous decision to Sumu Darji at UFC on ESPN, Chiesa versus Magny. Benoit is the slight favorite here. He's minus 130, where Adashev is plus 110 as the underdog. Keith, you were mentioning off air that you think Benoit is a little better than his UFC mark might indicate, and that you even thought he won the Tim Elliott fight. I mean, just jump from there. Tell me what you're thinking about him and how you're feeling about this fight.
Yeah, so I had to take a second because I was trying to find my notes on them. And the problem is I was looking at the prelims where this fight probably should have been, and then I realized we're on the main card. Yeah, Benoit, I do think he's better than his record. I mean, he's faced some good competition. I mean, he's got a win over Sergio Pettis. Like, that's obviously aged very well. Now that he's the Bellator champion. His last fight against Tim Elliott, like I said, I thought he won. Like, I'm not screaming robbery or anything like that, but I scored it for him. He's a wrestle boxer who doesn't wrestle enough. He's very athletic. He fights out of both stances. I think his boxing is tight, solid head movement. He sets up his attacks with feints very well. He's got a beautiful jab. But one of his biggest issues is he tends to throw single strikes instead of throwing combinations. And he can get outworked because of that. But he's got good power in both of his hands. I like that he will target the body. I noticed as I said, he fights in both stances. He throws a lot more kicks, and he's got good kicks, but he throws a lot more kicks from the southpaw stance. I love his dipping high kick. Like, he has that Robert Whitaker dip to one side and throw the high kick on the other side, something that we talked about TJ Dillashaw does a lot. He knocked out Ashkan Mokhtarian with the same high kick we're talking about. He likes space, though. Like, he wants to work from space, and he hated the pressure from Tim Elliott, which is even more impressive to me that he was forced to fight a Tim Elliott style fight and still, which I think is the best stylistic match for him, and still won, in my opinion. But one thing that he has an issue with is like a lack of urgency and refusal to at times to turn up. Like, there was times he had Tim Elliott, like, he caught him with a clean shot and probably should have. If Tim Elliott is taking a step back, you probably have him hurt. Like, you don't see Tim Elliott ever take. If he's got to step back and regather himself, you should be turning up right then. He has a wrestling background. Like I said, he hardly ever uses it. He more uses it in takedown defense. Like, he's got a good, strong takedown defense. And even when Tim Elliott got on his hips, he created some great scrambles. Kept the what do they call? They just kept the movement going. And I thought he showed that great against Tim Elliott. Now move over to Adashev. I know I'm saying his name wrong. I apologize. Southpaw. However, he also switches stances a lot, so we might see a lot of that going on. A lot of foot battling between these two. He's a counter striker. He tends to fight in bursts, though. He has an in and out style. He wants to be all the way out and then suddenly kind of come into the pocket, and blitz into the pocket, and then throw down. He's willing to kind of brawl in the pocket. He has like winging overhand shots. Like, he throws it from both the southpaw and the orthodox stance. He just kind of comes in and he throws this winging shot. He does hit hard, I'll give him that, but he's very heavy on his front foot, leaving open the calf strikes. And he really struggled in his last fight against Subajari's reach. He did mix in a takedown, which, like, last time we broke down film him, I said, I don't know anything about his ground game because I didn't see anything on the regional scene. And then he was getting knocked out too quick in the UFC to do anything. But he did get a takedown in his last fight, which I liked. And then when he actually got the takedown, he landed some power shots. So I actually feel much better about him moving forward. Like, even though he got absolutely destroyed by Subajari, like, I think his skill set is, I have more respect for him than I did heading into that fight. That says, like I said, I think Benoit's better than his record is. It says, I think he knocks Adashev out. Like, he's got the power. I've seen Adashev get knocked out before. Give me Benoit by first round knockout. I know Benoit is the favorite, but he's not. What's the line? He's not a huge favorite.
Minus 130.
130. Like, I think he should be bigger than that. I know some of that has to do with his record and maybe the unknown of Adashev, but I'm gonna give my best bet right now. I think Ryan Benoit is that. As I always like to say, if you're betting, please bet responsible. Don't bet your mortgage. But if you want to put a little cheddar out there, this is the fight I would pick.
I'm glad you see it this way. I don't know if Benoit is better than his record, though. I do think both the Elliott and the Alatang Hailey fights were, like, really close. He definitely is what he is at this point. Like, he's had a couple of enormous layoffs, so he hasn't developed, as much as I thought he might have, like, looking at him like 5 years ago. But whatever he is now, I do think it's too much for Adashev. Tom Feely, who writes the official previews for Sherdog, he said this ahead of, I think, Adashev's last fight, that this might be the, rawest fighter, I've ever seen join the UFC, just in terms of just how little MMA experience he has and just how little his game has developed. So if he sticks around, like, we have no idea what kind of fighter he might look like in a couple of years. He has some basic tools and he has some athleticism, but this is not the fight for him. Like you said, his tendency to want to fight and burst and kind of pounce into the pocket against a guy like Benoit, who he is a almost patient to a fault counter striker, is going to cost him. He's going to get hit. He's going to get rung up. I don't know if Benoit will get the finish, but I'm going to go ahead and call it just because I've been calling way too many decisions on this card. So I have that gambler's fallacy that, like, if the roulette wheel hasn't hit red in a couple spins, it must be due for it. So we're due for a finish here. Give me Benoit by second round TKO. Next up, it is a last minute rebooking at welterweight as Niklas Stolze takes on Jared Gooden. Stolze, the 28-year-old German, is 12-4 overall. He's 0-1 in the UFC. Debuted last July at UFC on ESPN Whitaker versus Till and dropped a unanimous decision to Ramazan Amaev. He'll be taking on Gooden, who stepped up on just days' notice. The fight was confirmed on Tuesday of fight week, but the man who goes by Night Train, a 27-year-old from Georgia, is 17-6 overall. He is 0-2 in the UFC. Dropped his debut to Alan Jouban by unanimous decision back at UFC 255. Came back in March at UFC 260 and lost a unanimous decision to Abubakar Nurmagomedov. Odds on this one, because the fight was just booked, are all over the place. Case in point, when I looked Wednesday morning, you could find each guy as the underdog. It seems to be kind of coalescing now, and what you're seeing is Stolze as a mild favorite around -175, -180. You can still get Gooden as high as like +145 as of Wednesday. Keith, this was originally booked as Niklas Stolze versus Munir Lazzez. That was floating around the undercard and the main card. And for a minute, when the Dawkins fight got dropped, it was even rumored to be the co-main event for a while. You and I seem to be in agreement in that was not a good matchup for Niklas Stolze. I mean, he seemed really indignant and kind of went after Lazzez for dropping off, but he might have dodged a bullet there.
Yeah, I think he did. I didn't go I actually started breaking down Stolze after that fight was canceled. Like, it was more just the way I went down my list. I didn't get to that fight yet, but pre-tape study, I was leaning towards Lazzez. Fairly confident too.
What I'll say about both these guys is that, okay, yeah, neither of them has won a single fight in the UFC yet. Stolze's 0-1, Gooden's 0-2, but all three fights have been against good welterweights, and they've all been against the type of fighters that were built to deny these guys the kind of fight that they really wanted to have. Like, if nothing else, a fight with Munir Lazzez was going to give Niklas Stolze the chance to try out his rangy kickboxing and see if he could take down a kickboxer and out grapple him. I wasn't going to pick him to do it, but it was going to be a chance to fight his fight. Same thing with Gooden. Like, he wants to be, a distance kickboxer, and neither Alan Jouban nor Abubakar Nurmagomedov would let him have that kind of fight. So this should be a lot more fun fight, I think, to watch than, the original matchup or any of the more rumored matchups. I am still hanging on to the notion that Jared Gooden is better than his UFC appearances have looked. And I don't know if that's based on actual science from the regional fights of his I watched, or just based on how promising his individual tools look in flashes during the fight, like as he's able to uncork individual strikes, before he gets crowded or countered and things like that. So I'm going to toss this to you to give me the X's and O's, but I'm leaning Gooden in this one because I still am feeling like he needs like a breakout fight. He's he was matched in the UFC like tough right off the bat. Alan Jouban, just a veteran guy that's tough for someone like Gooden to look good against. And then Abubakar Nurmagomedov, he's a future top 10 guy in this division. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm right. And let me know who you got in this one.
Yeah, so I agree with everything you're saying about Gooden. If you remember, I actually picked Gooden. I think I picked Gooden. Didn't I pick Gooden to beat Nurmagomedov in his last fight? I mean, that was a terrible pick, but I'm pretty sure I picked Gooden in that fight.
I'm too polite to remember.
Yeah, thanks. I'm sure someone will tell us in the comments. I'm pretty sure. So Gooden, the one thing that stands out to me is just how big of a dude he is. He's big for the weight class. I like his kickboxing. Not a lot of tells. He throws everything short. He doesn't really wind up on a lot of things. Kind of just touches. Everything comes off of a stinging jab. Does well to slide into the pocket, unload other shots. Will work the body. The one thing that jumps out to me, and I've said this 3 fights in a row because he does it. I hate his rare punch uppercut, like throwing his. If you're in an orthodox stance, throwing your right hand lead uppercut, you're going to get knocked out. Ask Chuck Liddell, ask Junior Dos Santos. It's not going to work out. He doesn't like pressure either, and he doesn't like having someone who's more explosive than him. Stolze will pressure him. I don't think Stolze is more explosive than him. And Gooden's a wrestler. He's a decent wrestler. He can get on your hips. He can out-grapple you. He's a solid grappler, but he's not spectacular. He's not Ronnie Yaya or anything like that. Now move on to Stolze, also massive for the weight class, but he's more long and lengthy than he is just muscle. Good movement. Actually, I'd say great movement. He moves around a lot. He does stand up a little high for my liking, and that's probably more of just from his height. But I love that he throws leg feints because he has such long legs, and those leg feints set up all his future kicks after that. Kicks to the legs, kicks to the body. I love his step-in knees. His boxing is serviceable. I don't think it's great. He's more of a kickboxer, everything coming off his kicks. He can be backed up in a fence, which was really disturbing against a guy like Ameev in his last fight who wants to take him down. But what I love, even though he clearly lost, I love that he snuck in a takedown on himself and took Ameev down. I like that moving forward. He's got weak takedown defense, but to his credit, he kept making Ameev work and he got back to his feet. And he does have 5 submissions on his record, and he was throwing up submissions. And just because he didn't get them, he was using them to give him space to get up, which I loved. This is a tough fight to tell. If Gooden had a full camp, I would feel much better about him. I don't really know what his camp situation was as I found out about this fight, 12 hours ago or something like that. So with that said, I'm going to go with Stolze. I like his length. I like his leg kicks. I like his pressure. I like his underrated wrestling. So give me Stolze by decision.
There you go. Another bit of mild dissension here, as I will go with Gooden by decision, but that fight should be a fun one. Third from the top of the UFC on ESPN 28 main card, it is a strawweight matchup between 2 women looking for a little bit of redemption in Cheyanne Buys and Gloria De Paula. Buys, the 26-year-old, is 5-2 overall. She's 0-1 in the UFC since earning a spot out of Dana White's Contender Series last summer. Her debut took place in March at UFC on ESPN Brunson versus Holland. She dropped a unanimous decision to Montserrat Conejo Ruiz. She's taking on De Paula, the 26-year-old Brazilian, also joined the UFC out of Dana White's Contender Series last year, debuted also in March at UFC Fight Night Edwards versus Muhammad, where she took on Jinh Frey, who is mysteriously buried about 6 fights down below her on this card, but nonetheless beat her by unanimous decision. So 2 women, 0-1 in the UFC, looking for their first octagon win. Buys is the favorite here. She is minus 170, minus 175. You can get De Paula at plus 150 on the comeback. Keith, I feel, and it seems as though you feel as well, that both of these women are better than they looked in their lone UFC outing. I'm not saying this fight belongs third from the top. I would argue that it probably belongs beneath, both the other women's fights, the other women's fight on this card. But here they are. And I believe Baze is better than she looked because, coming up through the regionals, on her appearance on Dana White's Contender Series, she had a little bit of that Macy Barber energy, like not quite to the same extent, but someone who was decent everywhere. But what made it go was she was always a better athlete, always stronger, and willing to leverage that and be aggressive. And then, she ran into Montserrat Conejo, someone over whom she had all the physical and stylistic advantages, and just completely failed to make any in-fight adjustments as Conejo threw that head and arm like headlock throw on her. I don't want to exaggerate, but it feels as though she probably did it like 6 times. And just first week of wrestling, wrestling room, like, okay, this is how you counter this, and just was never able to do it, despite having, Fortis MMA and her own husband, who's a decorated wrestler, in her corner. I have to believe that that's an aberration, that someone who's as young and talented and generally well coached as she is, that was a one-off. Like, that's just not going to happen again. Same thing with De Paula. I have to believe that she is more like the woman who fought in Brazil and fought on the Contender Series and was like an aggressive, sharp striker than someone who just never got out of second gear against Jinh Frey. Just completely allowed Frey to impose the Jinh Frey game plan on her, and really didn't even make many efforts to break out of that. It's almost like she just watched herself lose the fight. I have to believe that neither of them is that woman, but if both of them are the woman that I thought they were, after their Contender Series appearance, I've got Baze in this one, and I've got her big time. I don't think Paula's got the physicality to keep Baze from. For one thing, I mean, Baze could hit her on the feet. She's not as polished a striker, but she probably hits harder. And I think once she gets her hands on her offensive wrestling has never been in question. Like, we spotted some holes in her defensive wrestling, obviously, but her offensive wrestling, not in question. I think she's going to take De Paula down and kind of maul her on the ground. Give me Cheyanne Baze, and give me Baze by 3rd round TKO with ground strikes.
Wow, yeah. So I totally agree with everything you said about these two guys, these two women being much better fighters than they showed in the debuts. I like both of them coming off the Contender Series. I picked both of them to win their fights. I picked both of them to get contracts. And because of that, that's why I hate this matchup. I hate that they're booking two girls at 0-1 that I think have promise. They just really got to bury the loser, and then people are going to look at them as not that good being 0-2 in the UFC. And I kind of like both of them. Now I'll start with Baze, who you took. She's a Taekwondo black belt. She's got good movement on her feet, fast hands. Her straight right is her best punch. She likes to check left hook too. Good power. I've seen her drop opponents in the past on the regional scene. Has good kicks. You see that with a Taekwondo style. A lot of side kicks. She mixes in wrestling, though she can shoot from too far away. She has good body lock takedowns. She tries to head and arm throw herself, which I hate. But watching her on the regional scene, I thought she was a much better wrestler than she was. And then I saw what Ruiz did to her. As you mentioned, like, she threw her like a dozen times. It was the same throw. And then I was like, wow, I really misevaluated this girl. Like, it could have been ignored didn't make any adjustment, ignored it, and that really bothered me. She also struggled to get back up, which I didn't like. She is hard to submit. I go back to her when she was an amateur. Vanessa Demopoulos put her in a bunch of submissions. She didn't submit. She also has some submissions of herself off her back, and she's insanely tough. I go back to Demopoulos' fight. She dislocated her elbow, and this was an amateur fight. In a fight that she was winning in the very end, she dislocated her elbow, and she kept trying to fight with a dislocated elbow, so the referee had to stop it. De Paula, on the other hand, she's a high-volume striker on the feet, light on the feet, long and lengthy, fast hands, long jabs, straight punches down the pipe, accurate right hand, throws combinations. She has decent power. Defensively, she likes to pillar, which I don't like. I wish she would use more head movement. But nice kicks. I like her stepping knees. Her Muay Thai plum is a good offensive tool for striking, but that was actually where Jinh Frey was able to get 2 takedowns against her. But she's got strong, powerful knees in close. Her dirty boxing is good. Crushing high kick. She will sneak in some takedowns herself, and her top control is solid. She likes to attack submissions, head attacks, guillotines, darces. She did it a lot against Polina Macias. Hard ground and pound, but weak takedown defense, which I didn't think it was an issue until the Jinh Frey fight. I didn't realize how much she struggled, especially. I seen her get headlock once on a regional scene, but I kind of blew that off. And what stood out to me, not only did she take it down, but her struggle to get back up. Like when Jinh Frey got a takedown, the round was over. And Jinh Frey briefly had her back. So I'm intrigued by the matchup because I like both of them. But like I said, I think they're still both good prospects. If it goes to the ground, I agree with you. Like Bae should win. And that's probably the most likely outcome. But on the feet, I like DePaulo. It really is a coin toss to me. So I'm gonna go with the upset. I'm gonna go with DePaulo by split decision. I like her movement a lot, and she's faced better competition than Baze has faced. So I'll go with that. But if Baze, like you said, Baze takes her down and just out wrestles her to a decision, that wouldn't shock me at all.
That brings us to the co-main event of UFC Vegas 33, and it is a bantamweight matchup between Kyung-Ho Kang and Hani Yahya. Kang, the 33-year-old Korean, is 17-8 with 1 no contest overall. He is 6-2 with 1 no contest in the UFC. He's on a 3-fight win streak. Those wins coming over Pingwan Liu, whom he beat via split decision at UFC Fight Night Edgar versus Korean Zombie back in December of 2019. Over Brandon Davis, whom he beat at UFC 241 in August of 2019, and Teruto Ishihara, whom he choked to sleep at UFC 234 all the way back in February of 2019. He's taking on Yahya. The 36-year-old Brazilian is 27-10-1 with 1 no contest overall. He's 10-6-1 with 1 no contest since joining the UFC out of the acquisition of World Extreme Cage Fighting. He fought most recently in March, choking out Ray Rodriguez with an arm triangle choke in the second round at UFC Fight Night Edwards versus Muhammad. Prior to that, his last appearance was a majority draw with Enrique Barzola at UFC Fight Night Lee versus Oliveira back in March of 2020. Kang is the slight favorite here, despite the long layoff. He is minus 140, where Yahya is available at plus 120 as the slight underdog. One might reasonably ask, how is this the co-main event? Certainly Keith and I have asked it, but you look at it, this is the only other fight than the main event between two people who have winning records in the UFC and are both coming off of a win. I'd also argue that two slightly underappreciated guys. Kang, obviously, because he's been out of the sport for over a year and a half. Yahya, because he's Hani Yahya. And he is right up there with Michael Johnson on the list of people where if you take his best wins and his worst losses, the gap between the two of them is the widest. Like, I can't believe that the same guy who beat blank managed to lose to blank. And it's not because, he fell off a cliff or, just got in a horrible car accident or something. It's just he is that unpredictable and he's that weird of a stylistic matchup. In a sport where announcers and sometimes media and fans are too eager to throw around the term world class for somebody's skill set, Hani Yahya is absolutely a world-class grappler. He is a 2-time Mundial's gold medalist. He's an Abu Dhabi winner and an Abu Dhabi runner-up. He is one of the greatest lighter weight grapplers ever to cross over from BJJ to MMA in the prime of his career. Having said that, I mean, what he does best, the guy is, this is his 40th fight. Yeah, he's 39-fight veteran, 27 wins, 21 by submission, 0 TKO or KO. I mean, you have to try not to have a single win by TKO in a 40-fight MMA career. I mean, even Damian Maia accidentally TKO'd some people on the ground. Like, Hani Yahya is like as much of a specialist as you'll find in the sport today. And to be able to do what he needs to do against Kyung-Ho Kang, I think that's going to be a big ask. Kang is a huge bantamweight. If the time off and injuries have not compromised him, he's going to be stronger and a better athlete than Yaya. The good thing about Hani Yaya is, yes, he's a grappling specialist. He has a ton of submissions, but he's also the kind of grappler who can win rounds. So, I mean, he can win a decision just by keeping you in desperate trouble on the ground for 2 rounds out of 3. But I think he's going to have trouble even getting it there against Kang. Unless Kang is severely compromised, I see him just piecing up Hani Yaya's extremely rudimentary striking and footwork for at least 2 out of 3 rounds and just winning a pretty straightforward decision. I don't think it'll be a barn burner, but it'll remind us of how good Kyung Ho Kang has been. And, you know, in as much flux as bantamweight has been in recently, to have a guy who's, you know, still on the right side of 35 and is on a 4-fight win streak, it'll be interesting to have him back. Kyung Ho Kang by decision.
Yeah, the first thing I say about Kang is how he won a split decision against Brandon Davis is madness to me. Like how that was a split decision. Like he easily won that fight. Like I don't know what the judge was watching. Kang on the feet, beautiful jab, straight punches down the pipe, accurate right hand, great power. He dropped Brandon Davis with punches, quick high kick. He doesn't check leg kicks though. Like Brandon Davis did have some success beating up his leg with kicks. He does still keep his chin high in the air, which I don't like, but I like his wrestling too. Good timing on his entries, though sometimes he'll shoot, overextend and be stuck on bottom, but most times he gets the takedowns. Good top control, stays glued to his opponent. We saw that in his last fight. Good ground and pound, good back takes. He is a submission threat, has 11 subs on his record. Yeah, you know what he is. He's 36. Obviously, he's on his last leg. He was never a good striker, and obviously, I don't think he's gonna get better at this age. I think he's gonna get worse. But he's a wild man on the feet. Like he just throws hard. He's extremely aggressive. There's everything he has in every shot. You said it. Like he's not gonna knock you out, as you mentioned. But I think he's brilliant what he does. Like I said this last time. I think the last time I said this when we were breaking him down. He likes to be wild because he wants you to be dumb enough to take him down. Like you get a lot of pressure on him throwing wild, and you drop down, and you either pull your hands up to block those wild things and he can shoot underneath you, or you drop down and get into his guard. He's a good wrestler for, he's not just the jiu-jitsu guy. He's got good entries. If he can't get you down there, he'll pull guard. He's an extremely high level grappler. You talked about his credentials. Great in scrambles, slick back takes, has 20 career submissions, but I also like that he has a wide variety of them. He's hit pretty much every single sub there is in the game. He can armbar you, rear naked choke, heel hook, whatever. Like he'll do all of them. The Enrique Barzola fight is very worrisome to me because he gassed out in that fight. So this comes down to, can he trick Kang into shooting? And if Kang shoots, will the size difference be that big or fair? And can he outwork in the grappling Kang? 2 huge major things. This is the fight I have of the entire card I've had the least amount of confidence in, because I really, really like Kang. If he keeps it on the feet, I totally agree with you. I think he smashes Yaya. I think he actually might put him out. However, I think Yaya's pressure is going to force Kang to go what he's very natural at doing when someone over pursues, and that's to shoot. And he usually has the grappling advantage over pretty much everyone he faces. However, there's very few people I would pick to out-grapple Ronnie Yaya, and Kang ain't one of them. I think Kang's going to be winning the fight, like you say, and then I think he's going to make a mistake and shoot on Ronnie Yaya out of just habit. And I think Ronnie Yaya is going to catch him in a scramble, and I'm going to say he catches him in a guillotine in the first round, and it's going to be one of those ones that if they refight 6 months from now, Kang destroys him. So I'm taking Ronnie Yaya, and I've picked this. This might be a disaster for me because I picked a lot of upsets tonight, but I'm locking this one in as my upset special.
There you go. Your upset special, courtesy of Keith Schillen, is Hani Yaya over Kyung Ho Kang. With that, we come to the main event of UFC on ESPN, Hall versus Strickland. It is a middleweight matchup between Uriah Hall and Sean Strickland. Hall, the 36-year-old Jamaican by way of New York, by way of Dallas, is 17-9 overall. He is 10-8 in the UFC since joining as the runner-up of The Ultimate Fighter Season 17. He is currently on a 4-fight win streak, 3 of them by stoppage. He's defeated Bevon Lewis, Antonio Carlos Jr., Anderson Silva, and most recently in April, Chris Weidman, who succumbed to a grisly leg injury just 17 seconds into the first round. He is taking on Strickland. The 30-year-old Californian is 23-3 overall. He's 10-3 in the UFC. He's on a 4-fight win streak, but most notably, he is 3-0 since returning late last year from a 2-year injury layoff and the decision apparently to stick at middleweight for good, where he had fought both at 185 and 170 previously. He fought most recently on May 1st, taking a unanimous decision over Krzysztof Jotko at UFC on ESPN Reyes versus Prohaska. Prior to that, he knocked out Brendan Allen at UFC Fight Night Felder versus Dos Anjos last November. And his return fight from that injury layoff was on the Hall versus Silva Halloween card, where he took a dominant unanimous decision over Jack Marshman. Strickland is the comfortable favorite here. He is minus 220, where you can get Hall at plus 180 on the comeback. Keith, I'm going to throw this to you for your pick first, but something interesting that you said to me off air was that you were excited to see Strickland, or see if Strickland can continue to get this thing done against higher level competition than what he's been facing. Now, obviously, the Brendan Allen win is probably going to continue to age pretty well as Allen continues to do well. But what is it about Hall that you're interested to see if Strickland can deal with, and how do you see the fight going?
Yeah, I don't know if it's anything about Hall necessarily, just that step up in competition. He's faced, guys, lower down the rankings, and seen him continue to, say what you want about Brendan Allen. He's not a ranked, highly ranked guy like Uriah Hall is. I just want to see, I know you've kind of really been pushing the, the bandwagon for Strickland. You were kind of one of the guys who kept mentioning how well he's doing. And it's a nice story. And I just kind of want to see how far it goes on. This is like another big step up to see. So Uriah Hall, when I think about Uriah Hall, this is what I'll say. There's good in Uriah Hall, there's bad Uriah Hall. And it's so frustrating because you never know which one's going to show up. So we take the bad, the bad things that Uriah Hall does. He ends up very tall, lacks head movement. For such a good striker, his head stays very stiff. He doesn't like to be pressured. He can be trigger shy. A perfect example of that is the Anderson Silva fight. He was way superior to Anderson Silva. It was still giving away rounds just by simply not throwing. And Anderson Silva wasn't throwing much himself. And he was still getting outworked. And then his chin, he's been knocked out in the past a lot. He's taken a lot of damage over the years. The good, he's very strong, obviously. He's got fast hands when he decides to throw them. He's got a nice jab. Everything works off the jab. He's got elite power. He really is a legendary knockout hitter when he does things. Obviously, the spinning attacks, the out of this world athleticism. When we think about, people still talk about Uriah Hall's knockout on the Ultimate Fighter is one of the greatest knockouts ever, if not the greatest. I don't have it as the greatest, but one of them. And he's underrated on the ground. He's a much better on the ground than you think. All you gotta do is look at the Antonio Carlos Jr. fight where Carlos Jr. had his back for the entire third round. I couldn't submit him. And this is Antonio Carlos Jr. submits almost everybody. He gets his back. So that's it. But the problem is we never know which Uriah Hall. I've heard the story about Uriah Hall, oh man, this guy could win the title one day. And if someone told me Uriah Hall is, well, hold on, not with Israel Adesanya because that's a really terrible stylistic matchup. But going back when, say, Robert Whittaker was the champion, if someone told me Uriah Hall would win the title one day, I'd be like, yeah, I could see that. If someone told me at the same time Uriah Hall's never going to win another fight in the UFC, I go, oh yeah, I could see that. That's how I feel about Uriah Hall. Yeah, now Strickland, my question mark is he this level? That's the question. We know he's probably top 15 now, but now is he top 10? Is he a main event level guy moving forward? There's a lot of things I like about Strickland. He's technically sound boxer. I love that he's a builder. He as the fight goes on, he just continues to. he picks up reads early and then he builds on them, and he has very Max Holloway style to him, where the third round he's throwing even more output than he was in the first round. He just constantly moving forward, which is why he's a little flat-footed, because he's stepping forward, he's flat-footed, and he's pushing off his feet to land shots. And he doesn't move. He stands right in front of you, and he's just going to beat you with pressure. He's got an elite jab. It's really, really is a good one. It's like 90% of his offense. Not a lot of tells. Short shots. Doesn't really load up. Doesn't really show. I like his straight right though. Like if 90% is his jab, I probably exaggerate a little bit. But like that straight right makes up the rest, and it's a good one. Good power. If there's any room left in the 100% that I somehow went down, the rest of it's hard kicks to the body. He doesn't check leg kicks, and that's his boxing style. He's very heavy on his front foot. But if you close the distance on him, he's strong in the clinch. He's willing to just kind of press you against the cage, lean on you. Doesn't have a lot of offensive grappling, but he has strong defensive grappling. So for his prediction, I'm looking at the lines, and I apologize. I wasn't listening to what you were saying about the betting lines, because I forgot that I didn't put the Pitbull AJ McKee fight, what we're doing next, on my list, the notes. So I was trying to scramble, trying to be cool. But I'm looking at Strickland like over 2-1 favorite. Like that's crazy to me. Like that's one of the craziest lines I've ever seen. I think this should be as close to a pick'em fight as there is. In fact, if you told me, like, I didn't, other than maybe a couple hours ago when I checked the lines, if you told me like who's the favorite, I would have thought Uriah Hall, bigger name, been in the main events before, has, a win over Anderson Silva, just broke Chris Weidman's leg. I expected him to be the favorite. That said, Hall is so inactive. He's so inactive. I mean, in the cage, not actually fighting, but inactive. He's so frustrating. I'm willing to be proven wrong by him. Like, I'm willing to pick against him and just be like, yeah, I don't know how to read Uriah Hall, because I'll admit I don't know how to read Uriah Hall. I love that he's with Florida MMA. If any team can turn a guy's career around and make them a championship caliber fighter, I think like Saif Saud seems like he has just a way to talk to fighters, and it's working well with Uriah Hall. So I like that. However, his inactivity is still an issue. He gives rounds away, and he hates pressure. And that's all things like Strickland knows how to win rounds just by matching forward and throwing nonstop jabs and hard kicks. Strickland's going to have to walk through Uriah Hall's straight right, his own jab, his kicks, maybe some spinning attacks. He's going to have to walk through that, and there's a very good chance Uriah Hall just lands one and puts him out. But I think it's going to be the opposite. I think Strickland's going to put Uriah Hall on his back foot and really frustrate him and just win rounds and just win by being more active. So give me Sean Strickland by unanimous decision.
I love a lot of what you put out there. I love that you laid out the idea that, Hall's, ground game is probably a little underrated or not talked enough about, because we've kind of been throwing out an incorrect, or at least incomplete and unfair narrative about the guy really since the first time he popped up on anybody's radar outside of the greater New York area, which was tough. The narrative that came out of the Tough 17 finale was that Hall was like the hype machine that the UFC was trying to groom as its next superstar, and that, Kelvin Gastelum, the pudgy, unsung 22-year-old like wrestler kid, like derailed the hype train. One, Hall never asked to be the hype train. He never asked anyone to call him the next Anderson Silva. He couldn't help that he kicked third grade out of Adam Sella's head. And two, the actual, like, I went back and watched that Tough finale fight. It wasn't ahead of this. It was ahead, I think, of either the Weidman or the Silva fight. And I had bought into that narrative enough that I found that I had misremembered it. One, Hall versus Gastelum at that finale was one of the best Tough finale fights ever. Two, it really wasn't a striker versus wrestler matchup. I mean, Gastelum probably got a little bit the better of the wrestling overall, but he didn't beat him with wrestling. And the best takedown of the fight was Hall going belly to back and launching Gastelum and slamming him. Like, he's been at least an okay wrestler since that far back when he was that raw. ever since then, there's another one of those guys, kind of like that we talked about, like Yaya, like Michael Johnson, where on any given night, capable of beating an elite fighter, on any given fight, capable of losing to a non-elite fighter. As much as I agree with you that it'll be interesting to see Strickland kind of try to do his thing against someone who brings the weapons to the table that Hall does, the opposite holds true as well. Hall's on a 4-fight win streak, but Bevon Lewis is out of the UFC. Antonio Carlos Jr. out of the UFC, but probably could still be in the UFC. He's a solid fighter. And then Anderson Silva wanted to have a slightly hard sparring session, and the Chris Weidman fight was over before we could learn anything, even if I heavily favored Hall going into it. Like,
that's a good point. It's a really good point.
Hall's, like, for each of these guys, it will be a signature win if he beats the other.
That's a good point.
But I'm with you. The things that Strickland wants to do match up really badly with the things that Hall has always struggled to fight off. Someone that comes forward, with pressure, someone that builds. I'm interested to see Strickland in a 5-round fight. I have the feeling that will favor him even more. Like moving up to 185, I'm sure has benefited his gas tank and his ability to take punishment. So yeah, I mean, I root for Hall to do well because he has a style that I want to see more of in the UFC, and for that to happen, he needs to keep winning. I've been in a lot of gyms. I've been around a lot of sparring. It takes a lot to like kind of make me like look across the room, but a couple of events ago here in Texas, there was an open sparring session, a small one, like they had it at like some Renzo Gracie Academy, and a bunch of Fortis guys came down here to Houston for it. And watching Uriah Hall and Jeff Neal like kick pads from like 5 feet away, dude, I wanted to flinch, but I was afraid people were gonna laugh at me. Like, dude, I've been in a lot of gyms, like, but the sound of Hall, like, and Neal like hitting and kicking each other's pads was terrifying. Good Lord, I would never spar with that man. But yeah, I'm with you. As sad as it makes, it's going to be kind of a sad thing where it'll probably look pretty interesting early on. Maybe Hall will even like hurt Strickland with something, and that'll prolong things because Strickland will get a little more cautious. But I expect him to build from round to round, and I think he might even finish it sometime in the 4th or 5th as he continues building and Hall keeps fading. Give me Sean Strickland by 4th round TKO. All right. Just a little bit of bonus content from Shillen and Duffy here. As with all due respect, the biggest fight of the weekend takes place at the Forum in Inglewood, California, as the main event of Bellator 263 features Patricio Pitbull Freire versus AJ McKee in the finals of the Bellator Featherweight Grand Prix, with both the Grand Prix Championship and Pitbull's lineal belt on the line. I'll say this right off the bat. Whenever you try to hold up something happening outside of the UFC to what's happening in the UFC, there's a bit of politics to it. Like, not talking about like literal like geopolitics, but because there's such a contingent of fans who think anything happening outside the UFC is, not worth talking about. And then there's on the opposite side, the contingent that thinks that if you're trying to elevate anything else to the level of the UFC, you're just trying to be a hipster, or trying to be contrarian, or you hate Dana White, or whatever it is. This is not us sitting here and saying, no, the best fight this weekend is a couple of, Japanese atomweights, fighting at 3 a.m. Eastern time. No, like, this is the top fight of the weekend in terms of the stakes, the historical legacy-based stakes. It's the highest level fight of the weekend in terms of, just the accomplishments of the two men getting in the cage. And it has every possibility of being the best fight of the weekend in terms of what actually happens once they get in there. Tell me I'm lying about any of that, Keith.
Dude, you are not lying. I think this is the biggest fight in Bellator history. That said, I don't think they promoted it right. We're a couple of days away, and you barely hear people talking about it, and I'm like ecstatic about it. I know COVID and that has really made it tough for them to promote, and I understand that, but they should have been, and I'm not saying this is the perfect comparison, but this should have been like Tom Brady versus Patrick Mahomes type comparison, like the GOAT versus the future GOAT. Now, when I'm saying GOAT, I'm not talking about MMA. I'm talking about Bellator. Because
Yeah.
that's what it is. It's the greatest fighter in Bellator history. And when I say that, I'm talking strictly what they did in Bellator. I'm not talking about Fedor and Pride. Most people understand what I'm saying.
Yes.
But that's what Pitbull is. When you take it strictly Bellator accomplishments, he's the best. It's not even close. And Pitbull, McKee seems like the next one. Like he seems like the Patrick Mahomes. And that's how it should be promoted. Sure, I understand that they have the hands tied when ESPN has partnered with their main competition and pretty much refuses to cover Bellator. But when I go to Yahoo, like the cover for Yahoo should be this one. When we go to Sherdog, the cover of Sherdog right now, I hope it is something to do with Pitbull and McKee. Because it's a bigger fight, it's a better fight, it's the best fight of the weekend. And I'll say this, like, not only is it the best fight of the weekend, it is, in my opinion, the fight that I am most excited that is currently booked. Like, I can't think of a fight that's currently booked that I'm more excited. And I'm trying to, and I might be living in the moment because I'm so excited for this matchup. And there's a little backstory to it because, and probably why I'm so excited. I was talking to a PR guy from Bellator years ago, like 2 years ago. And we were just talking about, and I'm not gonna say his name, but we were just talking about comparison UFC and Bellator promotional wise. And I always said that, yeah, the UFC matters and the name UFC really, really matters. There's so many people, like you were saying, just think of MMA, think of UFC, but it's still a star-driven sport. Like it's always been a star. Like the stars are bigger than the brand. And I said, if anybody could be the guy for you guys, it's AJ McKee. And this is before it was part. This is before the Grand Prix started. He's like, he's the guy I would put all my marketing in. They didn't, but they should have. He's got the personality. He's got the skills. Now he's doing crazy stuff we've never seen before. And he's undefeated. He's homegrown, which that I know means so much to them. Like this wasn't a guy that they got outside of. He's had his entire career in Bellator. So it's a big moment for them. And I feel like I'm not saying I'm picking McKee to beat Pitbull, but that I just feel like that vision I had 2 years ago is now here. And I don't know, and I might be living in the moment, but I don't remember the last time any Bellator fight I was this excited for. And I don't remember the last time I was excited for a UFC fight. Like I'm more excited for this fight than McGregor versus Poirier 3 was. I mean, all right. I may all right. You said we weren't gonna be hipsters. I might be in a little bit of a hipster, but yeah, let's just talk about it. Let's get into this, man.
All right. Well, it is Patricio Pitbull versus AJ McKee. Frey Pitbull, the 34-year-old Brazilian, is 32-4 overall. He's 20-4 in Bellator. He is on a 7-fight win streak, including the first couple of rounds of the ongoing Grand Prix. He fought most recently in April, choking Emmanuel Sanchez all the way out with a guillotine in the first round at Bellator 255. He takes on McKee. The 26-year-old Californian is 17-0. All 17 of those wins coming within the round Bellator cage. He is on a 17-fight winning streak. He fought most recently in November at Bellator 253, tapping out Darian Caldwell with a neck crank from guard straight out of a Bas Rutten self-defense instructional from 1999. Odds on this one, close to a pick'em. Despite Pitbull being one of the most accomplished pound-for-pound fighters in the sport, he is out there around -120. You can find McKee at even money currently. He's out there +100 on a couple of sites. Those lines haven't moved that much this week either. In as unpredictable a sport as MMA, and all that is compounded when you're talking about having tournaments, talking about having Grand Prix, it's a bit of a blessing that this Grand Prix actually gave us the matchup that everybody wanted from the beginning. I mean, think of all the Grand Prix we've had over the years where just the matchup that everybody wanted was derailed. That's how we lost Fedor versus Krokop the first time.
That's right.
I mean, remember Daniel Cormier coming in as an alternate and winning the Strikeforce heavyweight Grand Prix.
Chuck
just the
Liddell,
fact that
Vanderlei Silva.
Chuck Liddell, Vanderlei Silva never happened.
Rampage ruining it.
Yeah. I mean, this is almost the first Grand Prix I can think of where the absolute matchup that everybody wanted from the start actually happened, and there was never even an instant. There was never even an instant of doubt that this is what we were going to get. Like, once these guys got in the cage, they completely trucked everybody they faced. Both of their stock has risen during that time. McKee, because he's doing things we've never seen before. Pitbull, because, hey, the flip side, the other edge of that two-edged sword is that Michael Chandler, while this all went on, went over to the UFC, completely lamped a top 10, if not top 5 contender, and then came pretty close to becoming UFC lightweight champion. I mean,
just sorry to interrupt you, Ben. Imagine how big this would be if Chandler was the champion.
Oh,
you know what I mean? This makes the matchup even bigger.
I had no rooting interest in that fight. I was there live for UFC 262 when Oliveira and Chandler fought. I had no rooting interest. I was just like, let it be a great fight. It was a great fight, but I won't pretend I wasn't a little sad that Chandler didn't win just so I could see what Pitbull started to tweet immediately. But dude, I mean, that Chandler came close. Like, that could have been stopped in that first round, and it would have been an early stoppage, but it wouldn't even have been like the worst stoppage of that year. Probably wouldn't even have been the worst stoppage of the year in a championship fight, honestly. Like, he came razor close to being your UFC champion. So that does something to shine a light on and validate a lot of what Pitbull has been doing over the last few years. The guy, I mean, he's been fighting the best Bellator has to throw at him for a decade now. He has 4 losses, and they're all close decisions except for, the freak leg injury from like former welterweight Benson Henderson putting his weight on him. Like, he just hasn't had any bad outings. And he seems to have continued to improve even after like his 30th, 31st, 32nd birthday. He still seems to be putting new wrinkles into his game. Like, his striking is, it feels to me like his striking is just much more technically and defensively sound. He's always had a ton of power. He's kind of got that just like short man winds up and throws hooks power that, it's been a factor in MMA since, the beginning. But he seems to have a more complete tool set. Like I say, much more defensively sound. I'm going to let you weigh in on these things for me. With him and McKee, I'm most interested to see what happens when it hits the ground, because McKee is just, well, for one thing, he's a very, very good wrestler. But even on the extremely rare occasions when someone's been able to either stop him from wrestling or actually take him down, as Caldwell did in their fight, he just seems to be like 2 full steps ahead of everybody on the ground. Like, I think he might even be better on the ground than he is on the feet. Just, creative, athletic, great sense of body position, plenty strong enough. And yeah, just again, just like 2 steps ahead of what his opponent's trying to do. And the most obvious recent example, of course, is the Caldwell fight, where he was slapping that on Caldwell as though it was something he had done 1,000 times in practice, when he cannot possibly have done so. And Caldwell didn't even realize what was being done to him until it was too late. I thought Caldwell thought he was doing well until probably about the last 5 seconds, until he realized, oh, I'm stuck and this hurts. I can't even venture a pick on this, but I am actually leaning slightly in the direction of McKee, just because of the way he still continues to improve and show new wrinkles between each fight. Just each of his last few fights, he keeps showing us things that we've never seen before from him, and he keeps showing us things that we've never seen before from anybody. Like, matchups that were supposed to be tough matchups for him, he's just blown through them like they were nothing. Like, Pat Curran was supposed to be a serious test for him, and he beat Curran worse than Pitbull or Daniel Strauss ever did when they were having their big round robin of fighting each other 3 times. Georgi Karakanyan was this tough as nails, veteran who had never been just like flat out knocked out. Like, he lost like TKOs due to cuts and stuff, but had never just like actually been knocked out. McKee knocked him out in 8 seconds.
He called a shot.
Caldwell. He called a shot, and Caldwell was supposed to be, okay, this guy's a better wrestler than McKee. Let's see what McKee can do when someone puts him on his back. What he did was he tapped him out in a minute. Like, so I can't even predict how McKee is going to do it, but I've sort of bought into the hype and the magic at this point, that, when he's pressed, he's going to show us something we haven't seen before. And I'm leaning McKee.
Wow. So You're talking about the betting lines of how close it is. Like, I love that it's so close. I'm on bestfightodds.com. They have 10 betting lines out there, different sites. Like, it's a really good site to see. It shows you movement, shows you all kind of stuff. It's I know a lot of people use that site. Of the 10 betting lines, 3 of them actually have McKee as the favorite. Like Bet, MGM, DraftKings, and 5 Dimes all have McKee as a slight, like, -115 to -105. So, like, even the betting lines couldn't pick who the favorite is. And what impressed me most is, you were just talking about the run they had going through the tournament. They both were pretty much perfect. Like, Pitbull has 2 first-round stoppages in the quarterfinals and the semifinals, and his open round is against the former, bantamweight champion that he blanked him on all 5 rounds. AJ McKee, like, what was more impressive, the crazy, insane submission of Darren Colville in the semis, or the open round knockout, the 8-second knockout of Georgi Karakhanyan? Like, what was more impressive? Like, they're both insane. And then, did AJ lose maybe about 10 seconds? Like, Derek Campos got a takedown on him or something, like, briefly, and then he was. Yeah, I remember them saying, like, "Oh, AJ looks tired," and then all of a sudden he was, like, submitting him with the triangle like 5 seconds later. So I know I probably overplayed how big of a matchup, how excited I am. Like, yeah, I understand. I know I live in the moment, but so let's talk about Pitbull. Let's talk about his skills. This guy, you were dead right. Like, he's getting better at his age, which is insane. He's a pressure counter striker that throws a lot of counter power hooks. He's got power in both of his hands. He tends to just kind of sit back and then suddenly explode with hard combos. If you stay back, he'll just chop your legs, kick out your legs. I am a little worried about his chin because he's been in so many wars over the years. Like, eventually he's going to catch up to him, and we've seen him hurt before. But another thing we don't talk about him, like, you talked about his power and his knockdown. He's an underrated wrestler. Smother and top control. You saw what he did to Daniel Weichel, what he did to Juan Archuleta, but just out wrestling them. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. Can submit you. His guillotine is one of the best in all of MMA. He hit it on Henry Corrales. He hit it on Daniel Strauss. He just hit it in his last match against Manuel Sanchez. So the only thing you could probably do to him is maybe out wrestle him, and that's a really hard task to say for 25 minutes. And if you're shooting on his hips, you're going into that guillotine zone. And obviously, all he needs is to land one punch, and it's just. I mean, like you mentioned, Michael Chandler moving up in weight. AJ McKee, 26 years old. The scary thing about this guy, you're saying he's doing things that people haven't seen. He's 26. Like, he might not even be in his prime yet, which is really scary to think. I was talking to Antonio McKee, and when I was doing the preview, like, I wrote a preview for this, even though it started such a long time ago. I wrote a preview for this. I didn't make a prediction, just breaking down guys' skill sets. And I said AJ McKee makes the biggest gaps of improvement from fight to fight that I've ever seen a fighter make. He's oozing with confidence. He has like a McGregor level confidence to his game, the way he's talking right now. Like, he envisions it already. Like, he's already seen it happen before it went down. Actual skills, southpaw. He's got those long arms, long legs, great footwork, long jab, beautiful check hook, tons of kicks, teep kicks, high kick, the high kick that he landed on. Oh God, I was there live in intense. I can't think of what was the guy's name. The little short white guy. It doesn't matter.
Wait, that McKee landed?
Yeah, it was. AJ McKee landed a high kick. It was beautiful.
Dominic Mazzata.
Dominic Mazzata. Yeah. He was the guy who took the fight on short notice. He came in and finished short notice, but high kicks, spinning attacks. He's got big power. Just ask Georgi Karakhanyan. He's putting guys out. Great wrestler. Great timing on his entries. Great winning scrambles. He's got those long legs to get the sub, as you mentioned, the Darren Caldwell sub. He was calling. You were saying it was a modified neck crank. I know he said it's a shoulder lock. That's actually I don't know, but the fact that Pitbull, like, that was one of the tweets at Pitbull, like, you're a black belt. You even know what submission I did. And then you go back to the Pat Curran fight. You talked about Pat Curran. Remember, Pat Curran tried to take him down, and he just ate, like, slicing elbow, Kenny Florian style from the back. Like I said, there's a reason why we added this. We've never done that, where we added a Bellator fight, because it really. I mean, look how excited I am right now talking about this. Like, I'm way more excited than any other fight. If I could only choose to watch the entire UFC card or just this fight, I'm picking just this fight. I think it's the best fighter in organization's history versus the best prospect, in my opinion. Not the best prospect in Bellator. I think he's the best prospect in all of MMA. I think Pitbull is so underrated historically, currently. If someone told me that he's the best, like when Bellator promotes their guys, they like to oversell. Like they always sell, Cyborg's the GOAT. I get it; it's a promotional thing. Even though we also have Amanda Nunes knock her out, they still sell Cyborg's the GOAT. Fedor's the GOAT. They always say, but if they tried saying to me that Pitbull is the best featherweight in the world or the best lightweight in the world, like I'm not rolling my eyes. I'm not saying I agree with it. But he very well might be the best featherweight in the world. He very well might be the best lightweight in the world. If Pitbull got matched against Alex Volkanovski, I wouldn't be shocked if Pitbull knocked out Volkanovski. If he got put against Charles Oliveira, I'm not shocked if he knocked out Charles Oliveira. Like, he really very well could be the best fighter in two different weight classes. We don't really know, unfortunately. Now, McKee, on the other hand, he just seems special. Like, he seems like a different, like, this is, I to pull back the curtain, when I do film study on guys, I make 4 columns. I write things I like about their striking, things I don't like about their striking, things I like about their grappling, things I don't like about their grappling. All right. And then I have like a couple fun notes on top, teams, their age, whatever, like things that aren't technical, more, If I showed you my notebook right now, I have a whole bunch of things under good striking for AJ McKee. I have a whole bunch of things under good grappling for AJ McKee. The total number of things I have under bad striking and bad grappling, the total number is 0.
Huh.
I haven't found a flaw in this guy yet. Maybe he's been taken down a little bit, but as soon as you take him down, he submits you. You picked AJ McKee, and that's really bold, and I don't feel comfortable picking against Pitbull, but it just seems like it's AJ's time. Before the tournament started, I made a prediction that AJ is making the biggest jumps and improvements I've ever seen, and that he was my pick to win the tournament, which wasn't a trendy pick then. I'm going bold. I think AJ puts him out in the first round. I think he's that special. I think AJ's going to knock him out. That's my pick. That's my bold pick of the night.
There you go. 2 picks for the, currently almost even money AJ McKee to make history, take the featherweight Grand Prix trophy, take the belt, and perhaps take the mantle of Bellator's greatest homegrown fighter. I imagine we'll end up talking, I and whoever replaces you on Saturday will end up talking about this fight as well as the UFC card. But there you have it. The Sherdog Radio preview and prediction show for UFC on ESPN 28, Hall versus Strickland, plus a little bonus content about the Bellator 263 headliner between Pitbull and McKee. I've been your host, Ben Duffy. With me, as always, has been Keith Schillen. Certainly enjoy the fights. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Check us out on the recap, probably shortly after the UFC main event wraps, unless the Bellator main event is about to start. So we will kind of play it by ear. We'll keep you posted on Sherdog's social media. Thank you, and thanks for listening.